Okay, now we're going to begin the layout of our work. The overall work I showed you in the last video, I think, but it's going to look somewhat like this. It's going to have the orange slices depicted all over the page. I want you to think about allowing, when you go to do the layout, allowing the orange slices to fall off the page, like as if almost like they're cut off. You don't ever want to squeeze it in. Like here, see how just a little bit of it's falling off that edge? If you were to squeeze it in, it would look like something's wrong with the orange. So just let that, get cut off visually. These are getting cut off. The neat thing about that is that then you're inviting the viewer to, on their own, kind of make up what is running off the page. They get to interact with the piece and actually kind of have some imagination about what those pieces would look like. So it's just much more engaging. So allow those to run off. We are also trying to depict them life size. And then the other thing I want to point out is that we want to make sure that we are depicting them as they actually are seen, not what you know. So for instance, let me just draw. If I were to, on my own, without an orange slice in front of me, I might make the mistake of doing something similar to this where I would draw a circle, and then I would draw, basically the peel. And then I know that there's wedges, so I would go ahead and make those wedges. And honestly, I'm being very truthful. If I were to draw this without looking at an orange slice, it would probably look something like that. I might put some seeds in just for fun, and that would be my version of an orange slice. It's not that that isn't fine for cartooning, but that's not what we're going for. You want to be able to really see an orange slice like it is. So I have a couple orange slices here. Okay, so first off, the one thing that I actually thought when I this morning looked at a cut orange was the fact that I totally forgot about the inside. I mean, I completely forgot that there's this white bit in the middle. And the other thing I noticed when I started looking at the orange was that it had these little arcs at the end, and that they actually made almost like bumps that went around. And also, I forgot some wedges actually have more like it almost looks like the petal of a daisy. These look, of course, more like pizza slices, but each wedge isn't always just absolutely triangular. This one is almost rectangular. So each wedge is a little bit unique. Now there is patterning. I mean, these two wedges look very much like each other, but you're going to find some variables, variances in shape. So like this one is kind of long and almost looks like a top of an exclamation point. So they each have a little bit of a look to them. The other thing I would note is, depending on the orange slice you have, look at this one, it's kind of pithy and even see-through. This is more solid, but it's not actually, it's like it's got a kind of a flat top to it. This is the end of the orange, but it's got a different look than the other one. And even this one, look at this one, it actually has almost like a wedge forming in the inside. So just because you think you know what an orange looks like, until you have a still life in front of you, that information is not always going to register in your head. Once you train on something and draw it and draw it and draw it, you've drawn, let's say you really studied oranges and you studied oranges for years, you would be able to remember what you saw and you'd be able to depict it. It's all a memorization thing, much like if you were to continually recite some famous poem or scripture, you would know it, you'd be able to rattle it off. But if you don't, you'd wing it and you put a lot of different words in, right? You'd think of things that are maybe summary pieces that aren't actually word for word. So it's the same graphically. You have to study something again and again in order to depict it correctly. And if you haven't studied it a lot, you really need a photo source, or you really need a real source, a still life. Okay, I'm going to choose this slice out of the three that I have to begin, and I will just start laying in my shapes. Let me put my pen away so it doesn't dry up. And I'm going to think about those rules that I had in the rule of thirds, and I'm going to keep one slice kind of off center. So I would go ahead, and I'm looking at my slice. I don't want to put it on the paper because this is nice paper. I don't really want to ruin it. I don't know if you can see. I'm keeping my lines sketchy. Notice how I pick up my pencil. You can kind of, it's almost like you're brushing them on, or sometimes you can just kind of like lightly arc drawing a perfect circle from start all the way around to finish is virtually impossible. Most people just can't do it, and you really shouldn't expect that of yourself. Your hand is going to want to naturally bend one direction, so you can always turn your paper and then erase anything that doesn't quite work. Okay, so just however your hand works, and then just erase lightly what doesn't work. Keep it light. You don't want to be carving into your paper. Also, I didn't mention, but in your watercolor paper, use the bumpy side, not the smooth side. You want that bumpy part. And then I'm going to go ahead and lay in other ones. Now I'm using the same orange slice each time. And I'm just going to lay it around. Okay, and just keep moving around. Again, making them about the same size. So notice there is no orange slice plop in the middle of my piece. The reason is because it would be very boring. You want to make sure that it's not visually stagnant. It has a little bit of, just some interest, and one way to do that is to follow basically the rule of thirds, not sticking it in the center. And this one is going to be running off the edge. Okay, so you're gonna finish filling up your paper with the orange slices. This paper is actually very forgiving. If you've done sketching lines, it releases the graphite really well. You don't have to have them touching. I don't know if you can see, but right here I don't. Can you see that better? So I'm not gonna have it touching there. This is just rather random, really. And then just fill them in. So you're just gonna fill in those circles and let them run off the page. Once you do that, then you're gonna look at your orange and, just notice the pattern. Maybe notice how thick it is. Is it, if it might be thin, maybe your peel is thin. See how the peel is much thinner on this one than this one? So, what is your peel doing? So just go ahead and draw on the slices. And just go around and do that, okay? So you'll just fill them in. And just look. Practice seeing, because if you can train your eye to see, and not what you know in your head or what you think you know, you're going to be a much better artist. Okay? Oftentimes you'll find you can't talk when you draw. See, I'm having a hard time. Language kind of gets shut out when you draw. Especially if you're really in the zone. Oh my goodness, you just, words don't go flying. Okay, I'll just kind of hack out the last parts, but okay. So there's my orange, and I would go on to the next one. I don't know if you can see. Okay, and keep filling them in. And then when you're done, it will look, hopefully, something like that running off the page. All right, so that's the drawing portion, and now we'll get on to the painting portion.